Today we are taking a look at another all-in-one liquid cooler, but not just some liquid cooler. The beloved by many, awarded with stuff looking like a Christmas decoration, the holy grail of liquid coolers, a liquid freezer. We will finally have a look at a Arctic liquid freezer too. I am really stoked about today's video because if you do reviews about individual components, you really want to have a solid baseline, like this is good and everything above that is really good. On the channel we have that for case fans, the Arctic P12s. Really good and not expensive fans. But for all-in-ones it had to be the NZXT Kraken M22 until now, but that one is just too expensive to be a good baseline. But now we finally have a liquid freezer. Yay! Okay, enough talking, let's get to the features. What we have here today is Arctic's Liquid Freezer 2 in its 120mm variant. There are a total of 5 sizes for the liquid freezer: 120, 240, 360, 280 and 420. Pre-attached to the 37mm thick radiator, Arctic is including their best fan, the P12 PVM, which is spinning at up to 1800 RPM while pushing 56 CFM at 2.2mm of H2O. The 350mm long tubes are hidden inside grey sleeves with white stripes. When it comes to compatibility, the Liquid Freezer 2 can be used on AM4 boards for Team Red and every LGA 1150, LGA 1200, 2011-3 and 2066 on Team Blue. But please note that for 2011 and 2066 the independent loading mechanism, so ILM, has to be square. In order to provide additional cooling to the VRMs around the CPU, there is a tiny 3000 RPM fan right next to the water block. And instead of the usual throwaway thermal mucus, Arctic went all in and included a tube of their high-performance MX4. So, when I first unboxed this cooler, the very first thing I thought was, damn, that's thick. So instead of the usual 27mm thickness, Arctic went with a 38mm approach, providing the cooler with a lot more surface area for the fins. And even if these numbers don't seem to be that different, comparing them side by side, it's a lot. The other thing that is way oversized in here are those damn tubes. Although they are a bit short with 350mm, they are thick, like really thick. Comparing them to basically any all-in-one that I ever had, these tubes are just on a whole other level. But I also think that this is more of a marketing thing. The specs clearly state that these tubes are 12.4mm thick on the outside, while the inner diameter, so the free space where the actual water can flow through, is just 6mm thick. And that's basically the standard for any all-in-one, so you would just end up with around 3mm of rubber and sleeve material on each side, which absolutely do not contribute to any performance benefit at all. That being said, it does make them rigid, like really, really rigid. Maybe not like unbreakable, but good luck trying. And you may even need that level of strength because absolutely nothing in here is adjustable, not at the radiator nor at the water block. And in a worst case scenario where you would install the radiator in the back spot, you might be bending those tubes quite severely and you would not have any possibility to smooth that out by adjusting it anywhere. And then there also is this little thing, that VRM fan. So it spins at max 3000 RPM and it is hooked up to the pump, so everything in here will spin at exactly the same percentage. And we tried to stress test the CPU with and without that fan. Conveniently you can just unplug it with a pair of tweezers. Based on the fact that the temperature indicator 7 was the only one that changed when unplugging the fan, I am assuming that it's that one that is sitting somewhere near the VRM area. After stress testing, I'm still a bit confused about the fan. This is a 15-minute stress test on a 3700X at 2.4 volts on the V-core with a fan, and here we have the same test without the fan. Yes, the fan makes a difference, but both results are so far away from creating any issues that who gives a crap? For me, having this fan just boils down to a gimmick. In a normal operation inside of a case, you would always have some sort of air movement touching the VRM heatsinks. So the only scenario where I would see where this fan can be useful is like in a Thermaltake P5 case where you have zero air moving over the mainboard and you are doing extreme overclocking. But for normal people, it won't hurt, but it won't help either. We did also try to test the noise it creates. So we unplugged the P12 on the radiator, placed the mic right next to the little fan and hit it with 100% PVM. Keep in mind that you won't be able to run the fan without the pump, so that one will also be spinning at 100%. And even though we are able to hear a difference with the mic and it isolated from everything else, honestly I wasn't able to hear it at all if a fan was involved. No matter the PVM speed, at half a meter away of a test bench, no difference. On the installation part it is pretty much the standard. First you have to install these little mounting clips on the water block. Then for Intel it is the usual way, mount the backplate with the appropriate spacers, place the water block on top and you are good to go. On AMD there is a little twist. Arctic did release a new revision of this cooler where you'll get these weird looking brackets. Now, because there were some mainboards where the VRM must have interfered with the water block, we can now slightly offset the cooler by using those upper screw holes. So if you can, place the spacers and screw in these brackets into the original backplate by using the lower holes. If your mainboard has some weird setup around the socket, you can always fall back to the upper holes, which would slightly offset the water block, allowing for more space at the top. From here, on both platforms, you just have to plug in one single PVM header. So usually all-in-ones would come with multiple wires, one for the fan, one for the pump, and then there is NZXT with the full wiring harness, but not Arctic. They made sure that the pump and VRM fan are wired up together using a single header. And then they even extended that connection through the tubes to the radiator fan, creating a complete all-in-one that can be run over one single fan header. That's a really nice thing for cable management and all, but do keep in mind that this prevents you from defining individual fan curves for the pump and the fan, if that was something that you wanted to do. Okay, but now let's finally get to the most important part. Performance. We tested the Liquid Freezer 2 on our usual test bench using a Ryzen 3700X locked at 4.5 GHz and 1.4 volts on the V-core. Then we turned up the cooler to 100% PVM and started to grill the CPU with heavy load. Out of the box, this small all-in-one was able to keep the CPU at 74 degrees C, making it our new best 120mm all-in-one. Yay! And what's really impressive about this is the fact that this mini single-fanned cooler can perform just as good as Acer's 360mm Blizzard cooler. That's insane and really sad at the same time. Okay, we also wanted to normalize these tests, but we ran into quite an issue because we normalize with Arctic P12s and this comes with an Arctic P12. But we still tried because maybe it's a better version or a worse version, you just never know. So we unplugged the fan from the pump and installed our usual P12s and took them up to a separate fan header. No, it's the same thing. We also tried to squeeze everything out of here by sandwiching it using two fans. And here we lost another 2 degrees C, settling at 72 degrees C. So we ended up with a 120mm all-in-one, which performs exactly the same as a NZXT Kraken X53 or way better than a stock Blizzard 360. Wow. But that wasn't even the most shocking part for me. I am used to have Arctic P12 spinning right next to me all day long because of testing purposes, and sometimes I may even forget precautions. But it's just once you switch it up for another all-in-one fan that you realize how freaking quiet they are. So if you look at performance, not only is the Liquid Freezer a bit cooler than a Kraken M22, but it is significantly quieter. Though I think it's quite sad that Arctic isn't offering a squeeze everything out version with two fans. I know not every case could fit that in, but still. When it comes to the overall design of the cooler, I will try to go by the saying, if you don't have something nice to say, don't say anything at all. I think it looks spacey and 2005 tacky. Now, I don't think it looks really ugly, I just think that it has way too much plastic going on, and it has like all kinds of unnecessary weird looking shapes and edges, and in the end it kind of looks like a Millennium Falcon, and I'm just not going for it. But I am seeing Arctic as a company that absolutely favors performance over looks. Just like a P12. Amazing fan, but you can very quickly mistake it as a included throwaway item. The Liquid Freezer 2 is really no different. Its performance, both cooling and noise, is absolutely top of the line, and I would much rather have this in my rig than a fancy RGB shining rice cooker. On the could have been better side, there is one small tiny thing that it annoyed me so much it almost broke me. For AMD you have these spacers, and then you have to place that mounting clip on there, and because of the shape and how the weight is distributed, this is already wobbly as hell. But to make it even worse, the inner diameter of these spacers is a lot bigger than what comes out of the backplate, so it becomes even wobblier. And now pair this with installing it on a test bench where I had to lose one hand because I needed to keep the backplate in place, and I ended up knocking everything over so many times it destroyed me. Now you can actually fix this pretty easily, just make those spacers tighter. Take the Be Quiet spacers as an example from the Darkrock Pro 4. They fit on there nice and tidy, and this makes it so much easier to install everything. And while we're already on the subject, I just want to point out that this is a 38mm thick radiator. And if you slap on the 25mm fan, you end up with 63mm of godlike cooling performance. And even though that's amazing, it is also a lot of space, and you should really keep that in mind if you have a rather small case. So right now the Arctic Liquid Freezer 2 in its 120mm variant is going for around 56 euro in Europe and around $76 in the US. And that is not the cheapest 120 all-in-one I've seen, but it is still in the budget category, despite it being so much better than the more expensive high-end stuff. So from my side, absolute recommendation right there. Okay, so this should sum it up for the Liquid Freezer 2. At this point, I would like to thank Arctic for providing us this amazing all-in-one, and I hope you enjoyed it. If so, make sure to leave your opinion with a thumb up, thumb down, and the comment section below. And maybe think about subscribing, because it just helps a lot. Anyway, see ya!